going back to your question, who's the intended audience? Anyone who can find the experience educational, comforting, validating is the intended audience. But if I can pad those negative experiences with my mistakes, it might just make a lot of things easier. One of the biggest things that I've learned is hurry equals worry.
I've seen some like AI relationships. So you can create an AI girlfriend or boyfriend, like create them and have a relationship with them.
Weird.
How was away time? I mean, you were overseas.
Yeah.
Right?
Rest is relative, right?
Yeah.
Like rest can mean so much to so many different people. Some people find rest in action and adventure and activity, and they find it rejuvenating, and that's why it's restful.
Sure.
I think we've done a really bad job at defining what rest should be, right? And people confuse what's pleasing and what's tolerable sometimes for being like restful. And it's like, yeah, rest is just like a stop. It's a pause. It's a break. You know what I mean? I think that's what I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like someone told me a couple of weeks ago, like I rest while I'm working. I love working. And I'm like, okay, you love working.
Yeah.
You find pride and joy and accomplishment. I don't know if that's rest though.
I would follow that up with, what are you resting from? If work is feeling that, what are you resting from?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was this? You were gone for 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. What was it for you then?
We took some family time, and then it was followed by a business trip overseas.
Yep.
And family vacation time is not really restful because what people don't understand is when you take your family on vacation, you're just doing home in another place.
I would argue to say it's amplified because your routines are off.
Sure.
Food and like just basic routine is off.
Is new and different.
Sleeping in a new room.
Sleeping in a new bed, that can mess you up. Just 2 or 3 nights in a bed that your body's not used to can really mess you up. But how are you doing?
I mean, if I could say a word, I think I've said this before, but it still feels liminal. Still feels liminal. And that's not, I don't say that.
In a bad way.
Yeah, it's just that old cliche of like the trapeze, holding on to one, you let go. There's that like air time before you grab the other one. A lot of that, a lot of curiosity. But I think there's this quiet acceptance of it compared to, I don't know, let's say 6 months ago, 8 months ago. It's just like, here we are. It's still kind of looking for that next bar to grab.
Sure.
I want to do something a little bit different today. So Midlife Strong, I'm just thinking about someone who may be new here, right? Midlife Strong, we're talking about how to kind of traverse this season of life. Early on, even before we started the podcast, during our workout sessions, we talked about a study out of Dartmouth. As a researcher who kind of looked at the lowest point of happiness that trends across.
I remember this.
Nation, age, income, marital status, so on and so forth. And the short of that is between 40 and 47 is a pretty predictable lowest set point of happiness due to various factors. And so Midlife Strong is kind of a platform for us to kind of explore that and see how we can gracefully kind of walk through that season, because we're both in that age range, experiencing some, of the unhappiness, if you will, just because that's the season of life we're in. So having said that, we've kind of fielded some questions from followers, friends, colleagues, even some listeners and followers of the show. I'm going to toss some of those up to you, and we can kind of just ping pong back and forth.
Sure.
How can I redefine success for myself at this stage in my life? Keep in mind, these questions are coming from people who are genuinely in the same season as us.
Sure. And I just want to say something because I think it's important. And then can you just remember that? Because I want to come back to that.
Sure.
That's one that I've gotten as well. I think the most common, most frequent question I've gotten is, who's your intended audience? Like everybody asks me that.
Okay.
And I thought it was for people in our age range, specifically married men.
Sure.
But unmarried men without kids might be experiencing some of the similar things that we're talking about. There's going to be a lot of commonalities, but specifically married men with children who are in midlife. And then that kind of grew because I had started getting questions from a lot younger people. Jeez. And I thought about that for a second, and because you asked me a lot, what would you tell your younger self? What are 3 books you would tell your younger self to read? And that's all predicated on like, okay, we know a lot now. If we knew that earlier, would it change some things? Would it alter the path of thinking first and foremost? And that's very, very powerful to me because I came across a quote, and this has kind of been my mantra for this podcast, at least for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, whether we've known it or not. And the quote was, just because I give you advice doesn't mean I'm smarter than you. It means I've made more mistakes than you. Mm-hmm. Now, whether you're 45 or 18, the same holds true. Just like I'm learning from a lot of your mistakes, and you're sharing those things with me, and you're helping me to balance out my thinking patterns, and you're challenging me to think differently. And so, just going back to your question, who's the intended audience? I guess it's not really relevant. Mm-hmm. Anyone who can find the experience educational, comforting, validating is the intended audience. Now, if that's a younger person, awesome. Because as a father, I don't want to take negative experiences away from my kids because they're going to learn very differently then.
Sure.
But if I can pad those negative experiences with my mistakes, it might just make a lot of things easier. Because if I had been taught to challenge negative thinking patterns 30 years ago, I wouldn't have struggled with a lot of the consequences of those negative thinking patterns. Now, that doesn't take the experience away. It doesn't, because if you just recognize it sooner, you're still experiencing it. It doesn't mean like the problem is going to be solved. Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And so like to that younger audience, I've been asked by several people in their late teens, early 20s, and I'm like, yeah, this is marvelous. You're like a canvas. I wish somebody was telling me a lot of the stuff that I've heard from you then. Yeah. And then on the flip side are people who are like us going through it right now.
Sure.
Who might not have access to the resources, the combined resources that you and I have had, the combined therapy that you and I have had, for many reasons. And so they're just kind of stuck and alone on an island.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to bring this up later. This is related, but maybe a little side note of, we can openly discuss this too, is like, I think what we're doing is great, sharing what we've learned. Hopefully people learn from the mistakes, but maybe we start exploring how to substantiate the community.
Sure.
In regards to like, hey, if you're into this in any form, here's an invitation to kind of get connected beyond listening or watching.
Sure.
Maybe that's a members forum, group workouts, weekly. I don't know, but I'm just open to like, if it's there
to explore it.
Yeah.
I think what we have in common right now is that we're just kind of getting it out.
Yeah.
Because there's a ton.
Yep.
Like there's a ton. So going back to that question, how do you redefine success? Well, what you defined success as at an earlier point in your life is all based on what you thought success looked like. And for most people, generally, it's financial stability, monetary gain, right? For most people, generally, like being rich and famous and powerful is how generally you look at that and you're like, oh, that's successful. As you get older and you navigate relationships and work and pitfalls and shortcomings, that all changes.
Mhm.
Aside from the fact that maybe those things aren't actually what defines success,
Mhm.
just recognizing alone that you're having an internal conversation that's redefining what success looks like.
Yeah.
I think that by itself is success.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will live and die with one definition only. That's not an accurate or holistic definition.
Yeah.
And so can you read the question again?
Yeah, absolutely. How can I redefine what success means for me at this stage in life?
Yeah. And I think it's as simple as really two things. Number one, knowing where you are.
Yep.
And number two, being thankful for what you've already received.
Mm.
And that can be knowledge. It can be, financial stature, but just knowing where you are, like by itself, is a big redefinition of success.
Sure.
Because a lot of people are way further along than they think.
Yeah.
Just like, we had a company meeting this morning, and I love this this frame, which is every morning, millions of people around the world woke up dreaming of your life. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because that by itself, I mean, that means to that one person or million people, you're a success.
Right. Right. The two things come up for me. One is I don't know the specific numbers, but they took like a global index of like income and then compared it to like what a median income in the United States is. And it's like, if you zoom out and look at what 100,000 a year is, and then look at what the rest of the world, like you're in the top 10% in the world or something like that. I may not be super precise on that, but it was something like jarring to zoom out.
There's all kinds of statistics. I've also heard it differently. I've heard statistics like if you make $60,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of history.
Right. That kind of stuff.
The numbers are like massive.
Yeah, and I think, you can roll your eyes at that because there is some relativity, right?
Of course.
It's more expensive in the US versus
Of course.
India.
Of course.
But still, I think there is some value in like zooming out and getting that meta view of like, okay, it's not as bad as I'm probably ruminating.
Well, with that relativity, like the relativity works both ways.
Yeah.
Right. So I get it's all relative. I'm not saying that everyone's doing fine and there's a lot of people struggling 100%. But even in that struggle, we're still doing better than the average person in the 700s.
Yeah.
Which may or may not be relevant to anyone. And I understand lived experience is all that's really relevant. But today,
yeah,
we're probably doing better than 90% of the poverty in India,
sure,
in Africa, in war-torn countries all over the world.
Absolutely.
And it's not meant to say you don't have any problems, stop complaining. Not at all. It's just meant to say we're okay.
Just widen the perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that goes a long way in redefining what success looks like.
Sure.
So for me, being married, having 3 wonderful children, a successful business where I get to pour into people all day, every day, and high five them. And I know that they're fulfilled and that they're experiencing tremendous growth. That's success. That's way more success than I would have defined 20 years ago.
One more piece on this. We'll move to the next question. Robert Johnson, he's a psychoanalyst, and he says, for men, a lot of what rounds out their well-being and like, I guess, definition of success are feminine qualities, joy, connection, and peace. And he says in the West, we do a great job of building up the opposite of that, which is part of the equation of like power, status, making money, providing that, yes. But he particularly points towards like the second half of life, the qualities that need to be, I guess, brought back or cultivated are largely feminine in nature. And he's saying like, don't get rid of what you've built up. Just add in the qualities that you're like either missing or have just forgotten about. I was like, that's an interesting frame. I think a lot of it resonates of like, yeah, joy, peace, and connection. Those are, yeah.
Well, I think specifically with men, and you can get this warped really quickly. This is where like the definitions of toxic masculinity and I don't know if it's toxic masculinity or just toxic, like period, the end.
Right.
Like being insensitive. I don't know that that's a masculine thing.
I mean, there are women who are insensitive.
Right. And if you're too insensitive, does that make it toxic masculinity? No, I think going back to a lot of the conversations we have about spirituality and balance, and it's like we're pushed to go, get, hunt, build, grow. And I actually think the common denominator is like speed.
That's an interesting take. Tell me more.
I feel like a lot of the things that we define as, toxic masculinity, and I mean, again, we just said like a woman can be insensitive. A woman can be mean and rude. Like, why are we assigning like gender to feelings and emotions? Because a guy can be angry and a guy can be sad, and a guy can be happy and a guy can be joyful. And so the point I'm trying to make is specifically for men is in the pursuit of all these worldly gains, which we're taught and curated to like go do. It's just a lot of speed.
Yeah.
Fast, and just go, and work. And then you get to a point and you're like, I'm empty.
Yeah.
I'm tired. And now you start pursuing because you've been filled. Your cup has been filled with all this stuff. And the cup's pretty empty. You're staring down that cup and it's like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where you're like, real connection matters. A real, like a conversation with someone for 4 minutes where, they heard me and I heard them and we bonded.
Yeah. And
then we went our separate ways. We didn't speak again for months, but like the connection with our kids, when they know we're paying attention, and it could be the smallest, silliest thing in the world.
Sure. Yeah, I love that you bring up speed. It reminds me of this book by John Mark Nomer, who's a pastor out of Portland, Oregon, actually. He wrote, I think you'd enjoy this read, actually, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it's one of those books I come back to at least once a year because, like, we live in America and we're just fast. And
well, you know what I love to say that I've learned, one of the biggest things that I've learned is hurry equals worry.
Yeah.
Hurry equals worry.
Yeah. Yeah. That segues nice into our next question. What strategies can I use to cultivate deeper and more meaningful relationships and friendships?
So before I answer that question, and the question is, what strategies can I
use to cultivate deeper friendships and relationships?
So deeper friendships and relationships are so important. They're like incredibly important because I think a lot of the world is actually lonely and missing deeper connection, deeper friendship, deeper intimacy with their spouses, with their partners, with their parents, with their children. These are the things that when we're on our deathbed, we're either thinking about or basking in. And so the three things that I've learned to help cultivate deeper friendships and relationships is, number one, being present, which is something that I struggle with a lot. And it's really, really tough in today's day and age, but it's the simplest, easiest thing. It turns regular conversation, if you're present, just that much more powerful because it's more meaningful. It's more impactful. The second thing is to invest, really, truly invest in the likes, like what these people that you're trying to cultivate relationships with, what they like, what are their interests? When you're actually, and you might not be interested in the same things, but just having an interest in knowing what those are. It's scratching the surface on like what makes that person tick. And that results in deeper connections. And I think the third thing is time. And it kind of wraps into the first point, which is being present. The amount of time you spend with your relationships is a direct reflection of how important they are to you. Because we're at work 9, 10, some of us 11, 12 hours a day, 16 hours. I mean, yesterday,
right,
I was out of the house before anyone woke up and back well after they were asleep.
Sure.
I give that to my work.
Yep.
Do I give that to my personal relationships? God, I shudder, because not nearly as much as I should. But the amount of time you spend with those relationships is a direct reflection of how important they are to you.
Yeah. Reminds me of the quote, your behavior is a language.
Yeah. Think about it. We sacrifice time for our idols. What are our idols, whether we do it intentionally or not?
Yeah.
It's usually work and things.
Yep.
And we give them a lot of time. You know, do I give my wife 8 hours of the same intensity my job gets? Do I give any of my children 8 hours? And it's not realistic.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that anyone tries, but if so, good luck.
Yep.
But the point is, when I get the hour, is it as intense as my 8 hours working?
It's not duration necessarily. It's the presence and intensity.
And the quality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the three things to cultivate better friendships, better relationships are being present, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Secondly, taking interest in their interests. Yeah. And third is time.
What can I do to reconnect with my spouse or partner on a more regular basis?
This one is tough from a practical perspective because of everything we just said. But time is really important. Yep. And you know, my therapists have not glossed over that at all. Yep. It's time. It's really time. Time being present. It's all the same stuff. Yep. It's literally the same stuff we just said. But your spouse is one of the, if not the most important investment you're going to make. Yeah. And it's hard. And that's what I just want anyone listening to hear, anyone who's midlife with a wife and kids. It is hard because of time and bandwidth. Yeah. We leave ready to conquer the day, and we come home just tired. Yeah. I don't want to say defeated, but oftentimes I come home defeated from the day. Sure. From the duration of the day. Yep. Yep. Like sometimes I'll text my wife. I'm like, I got 30 minutes left of bandwidth. Yeah. And then I'm just done.
That's at a zero.
Like not zero, negative. Like if I can sit in a room and just cry alone. Yes. Like I'm done. Yeah. And that's not fair to her, and it's not fair to them. Yeah. And it's something I don't think I'm going to stop struggling with for a while. Yeah. But going back to how we started, we were talking about rest. It's really taking time intermittently for like a whole body reset. Yes. And you can do that on a daily basis, although it's hard, and I haven't really figured out the best way to do it. So if you have any advice, I'm all ears.
That'll get into our next question. Before we move into that, I wanted to add to how to reconnect with the spouse or partner.
Can I say one thing? Yeah. That has actually worked and been very successful is date nights. Oh, yeah. Date nights with your spouse or partner are so important. And more often than not, when we do it, it's successful, especially if you have a couple of ground rules that you're kind of observing. Like, we're not going to talk about work. We're not going to talk about big ticket items. We're not going to talk about finances, because sometimes those topics have their way of kind of
it places a wedge in like the fun of a relationship.
It takes over the conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's important stuff. When you're, married, 2 kids, 3 kids, like there's no shortage of problems to talk about. So, what I have been taught is, you just set a couple of ground rules. Yeah. Like, we're not going to talk about this, or this. And have you heard of, is it John Gottman?
Yeah, Gottman. Yeah.
That's your guy, right? He, is, I guess, kind of a visionary in the realm of relationships. And I've read a couple of them, and they're all great. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend even reading more. But he has an app called Card Decks.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
And it's literally just a bunch of different categories. And there could be like 5 or 6, 7 categories, like intimacy, dreams, fun, whatever.
Right.
And you just pull them out and you just tap, and they're questions.
Yep.
And it sounded elementary the first time we ever did it,
Yeah.
me and my wife, but it's like you really get to rediscover things that we don't talk about.
It's a pattern interruption.
Yeah, because
good.
all we're doing is talking about the same old stuff.
Yeah.
And not that a lot of it's negative, but it's draining.
Right.
And so, yeah, I would download card decks, go on a date with your wife. Don't talk about big ticket items. Try really hard to rekindle connection.
Yeah.
And that's important.
One thing for me on that question is, particularly coming from me, is tone. Like when I want something, or if like I need to talk about something, the words can be the same, but how I come off, or my energy or my tone, how I say it, has been such an eye opener for me, because my wife is really receptive and wants to help. When I come to the table with the tone I know she's going to receive well, versus me being shut off or like angry. So I think for us, like being mindful of the tone of how I communicate has been probably one of the biggest indicators of like connection.
What's scary to me is that, so thank you for sharing that to any guy who's listening or who's watching. You are not alone in this. But what's scary is to hear you sharing the same issue that I have, because you're much more laid back and even keeled than I am. Yeah. And to hear that you struggle with that is, I'm not going to lie, is kind of frustrating and scary, because I struggle with it on a daily basis. Yeah. It's not what I said, it's how I said it.
Yeah.
I mean, man, guys, like 50 times a day. Yeah. Like, and it could be the nicest message. It's just the way and the energy and the tonality that I did it. And I don't do it on purpose. Yeah. I actually spend more energy thinking about the content to make sure that I've checked all my bases. Yeah. Nothing hurtful. Yeah. Nothing accusatory. Right. And then somehow I still mess it up because my delivery was so off. So to hear one of the calmest people I know say that, we got to come up with something better for these people, because there's not much hope for the rest of us.
Yeah. I think I'll underscore that too with.
But it is encouraging that someone like you, of your demeanor, has the same problem. It's like, it's not just me.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the key detail, and double click this, wave me off if I'm inaccurate, is my style when the tone is off. And when you mentioned Gottman earlier, is very stonewally. Like I'm just like, I'm very like precise in how I want to hurt someone, and I'm not like outgoing about it. So I'm more like closed off and cold, but I'll hit you where it hurts with like 3 words, versus like throwing a fit and like being loud and angry.
That's me.
I think our styles are different, but the tone thing is kind of like the common denominator. Like how it's being delivered is not helpful, but the style may differ. Does that make sense?
It does. And it kind of goes back to the first question, which you asked, how do I like redefine success? I think it's a massive win that I now know.
Yeah, for sure.
My delivery and my tone is so important. No matter how many times I get it wrong, it's like I will always try, and now I'll try more than ever, knowing. But it is really frustrating. I think for guys in general, I mean, for me, I'm just being real here.
Yep.
I can say the nicest thing, the nicest words, the nicest message, the nicest suggestion, and somehow I have a tendency to always mess up the delivery.
That's a tricky one, man.
It really is. And I have a tendency in my mind to be like, all right, dotted my I's and cross my T's. I got that message right. She's going to love this.
So in those moments, can you recall like let's say you crossed all the T's, dotted the I's. Do you feel it in your body? Like, is there a difference when it's like, this feels right versus like, yeah, it's grammatically good, but I know this is still coming from a place of like,
no. And that's the frustrating part. It's like, I never really know.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to get ice cream?
Oh, okay. So is that a question?
Yeah, I'm like, hey, we're going to go get ice cream. And it's like, I just triggered something.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. We usually do a quote section at the end, but this is perfect. It's Thomas Sowell. He's an economist. And he said, there are no solutions, only trade-offs.
Huh.
And relationships, particularly with ourselves and the ones closest to us, I think we always kind of want it to be like a problem to be solved, but it's a process.
Yeah.
It's just a process. And whether that trends towards more wholesomeness or less wholesomeness, I think is a better barometer versus like, is it fixed or not?
And it's even harder for guys who are solution-based, solution-oriented. We just want to fix things.
Yep.
And the journey doesn't matter as long as we arrive at a solution.
Yeah.
It's tough.
How do I adapt to the physical changes that come along with aging?
Aging is real. About to turn 42, feeling it in all the wrong places. It is. I think the top three things.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just spitballing here, but the top three things. Number one is to recognize that what you have is all you're going to get. It's not going to get any better. And I don't mean that from a negative perspective. I mean that from the perspective of number two, you have to take care of it. And you have to do the right things to care for your body as you get older, because like a car or a truck, when you get it brand new, there's wear and tear, period, the end. It's never going to be better than the first day you bought it. You can keep it running really well and very well maintained, and that's the goal. And number three is to make it a priority, And for so long of my life, it wasn't. Sure. Training wasn't, eating right wasn't. And then the older you get, again, you realize you're like, it's not going to get any better than this. I really need to maintain it better.
This is related, but we can keep going. Question: how do I get back in shape at this stage in life? I can't work out like I used to. No. I know I have much time.
I'm going to ask you, because you're the former bodybuilder and you're the, trained me for so long. So the question is directed toward you. How do I get back in shape? Because I can't do the things that I used to do, and I can't train that way, and I don't necessarily want to.
Sure. I think it's looking at the fundamentals of physical health and starting there, because we're connected to social media, right? So there's always more supplements, there's always more hacks, there's always more, like, there's a million diets you can follow. So when I'm talking with someone or mentoring someone 40 and beyond with a really busy life, it's like, let's just do the basic things first that are realistic in nature. Meaning, if you were a former track star or used to work out a lot, 5 or 6 days a week, that's probably not realistic now. Let's just accept that first. What can you actually do week over week? Let's say 2 times a week is realistic. Start there. Actually, no, that would be step 3. I'm going to reverse back. I would start with sleep. If someone's doing nothing, I would start with sleep.
Just get better sleep.
Prioritize sleep first, because it's kind of like the linchpin to everything else. You're going to think better. You're going to be emotionally more sharp if you're slept well. You're going to make better decisions with food if you sleep better. So there's basics around that, right? Like trying to avoid blue light at least an hour before you hit the sack. Watch caffeine. So caffeine has a half-life of, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. So if you're trying to go to bed at 10, maybe like a 1 p.m. cutoff for caffeine or so. Keep your room cool. So that there's like a range for that, right? And some studies say 68 to 72. Everyone's a little bit different if you run hot or cold. but you want to lean towards the cooler side. One practical hack is taking a hot bath or shower if you can, because what happens is you take a hot shower, you get out, your temperature drops. That makes you feel sleepy. So a hot shower or bath before bed. And then if you want to, play around with some natural, what's the word I'm looking for? Remedies, if you will, like L-theanine, some lemon balm, maybe a tea. So hot shower and those things before bed, really practical things you can do. And then from there, I would look at the food part, right? Something super practical, as we talked about this before, is shifting towards more protein. You hear 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's difficult for a lot of people. Not impossible, but difficult.
It's just hard.
So what I tend to teach or say is whenever you go to a meal, try to have a fistful of protein at each meal. If you're eating, 2 times a day or 3 times a day, or even once, it's look at your fist. That's like a chicken breast. That's 6 ounces of salmon. That's 3 eggs or whatever. And then just fill in the rest. If you can get some veggies, cool. Get some fat, some, almonds, avocado, whatever. But protein's a must. Not even talking about calories or macros, just starting with habits, just include protein at each meal.
I think, not to cut you off, I think habits is what's key here.
Yeah.
Better sleep habit.
Yep.
Better food habit. And we're highly habitualized creatures.
Yeah. Yep.
And the second thing that you said, which is actually I couldn't stop thinking about, is caffeine. We have a caffeine problem. I don't want to say in the world, but we're definitely over caffeinated. I think it's safe to say that Americans are generally over caffeinated, and that kind of has a cascading effect on a lot of things.
Yeah.
On sleep, on it's an appetite suppressant, at least short term, and then you get really hungry and you binge, and that's something personally that I'm trying to cut back. Yeah. This is Lent right now. Yep. Trying to cut back on several things. One of which is just generally less caffeine.
Yeah.
Because caffeine turns everything up, and not always the good things.
Yeah.
So just habits.
It also feeds into what you said earlier, right? The caffeine feeds into hurry.
And I mean, I think hurry is the great grandfather of anxiety.
And it comes down to personal responsibility too, because I enjoy caffeine. I love caffeine. But like anything, right? If it's not used responsibly, it turns into crap.
Sure.
So I'm not saying don't have caffeine. Just
I personally enjoy
me too.
Coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
I love the flavor. I love the taste. I love it all.
Yep.
But that's something that, again, in terms of habits, can probably be turned down just a little bit.
And last thing I'll say on how to get back in shape in your 40s or beyond is there's a strength coach by the name of Dan John. He's kind of legendary in the track and field space. But I read something a while back. He calls them intentional communities. And he says, intentional communities basically are outsourced willpower. And this can be in the form of a coach or a trainer, or you're actually doing stuff in a group together. He talks about garage gyms and inviting friends over to strength train once or twice a week. But I think that's really important because you got, at this stage of life anyways, you got work, probably family, your own stuff. And by the time you're 40, man, you've probably taken some pretty big blows, big T traumas, most likely, right? And so to draw out or muster up more willpower to take your ass to the gym on your own accord,
it's hard.
3 times a week.
It's hard.
And some people look at this and say, you don't be a soft ass. But there's so many people who can't do it. So I'm saying it's not working.
I got to tell you, I see a lot of this on social media. The personalities that just tell you to shut the F up and go to the gym and stop. And I'll say this. There's a lot of better men than me. I'm okay with that. And I'm slowly getting to the place where I'm just done taking all of the pressure from people who don't know me, don't know my situation, don't care about me, and will never matter to me or anyone around me. ever.
Yeah.
And I used to be the type of person who, like, I would watch that video. Like, there's that one guy. I mean, I'm sure he's a great guy. You know, he's just like completely ripped, kind of like you used to be. And it's borderline. It's just like, really, man? Like, you're just gonna scream at people to go to the gym? Like,
Yeah.
like, there's a very, very fine line with having good physical fitness.
Mhm.
And for a lot of people, most people, it's really hard. I mean, there's a lot of Americans, dude. They're working 10, 12 hours a day to put food on the table for their families.
Mhm.
These are the unsung heroes that no one will ever talk about.
Yeah.
And I want them to be healthy, of course, and I want them to make good habits. But they're the ones who are going to be diagnosed with heart conditions and heart disease, and not because they're intentionally choosing to live
Right.
poorly. They don't have another choice.
Yeah.
You know, they're running on empty for their families. And so, again, to anyone watching, I just filter all the noise out with a grain of salt. Yes, go to the gym, get moving, do whatever you can to get as healthy as possible. But don't feel pressured by unnecessary noise.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
For sure. Last bit on this, but with intentional communities, there's another phrase that floating around. They're called third spaces. And so how I interpret that is there's historically the home and then the workplace. Having a third place to go. This can be anything. It can be temple, church, meditation group. But since we're talking about fitness, I think a gym inside of a community. So whatever you like, CrossFit, jiu-jitsu.
I think that's why the CrossFits were as successful as they were.
Right.
And I did it for a little bit, you know, in my late 30s before everything started hurting.
Yep.
Very short period of time, but it was kind of like a cool, like,
boot camp stuff.
Community. Yeah.
It's just like,
other people are there for the same reason as you.
Right.
And it's highly motivating.
Yep.
It's highly motivating when you have like-minded people with like-minded goals.
Yeah.
And so I think that can be anywhere, though.
It can be anywhere.
A community can be two people. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an establishment, right? Like if you have a buddy or two, it's like, hey, let's meet up and run some hills on a Friday.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be. I think it's less about not the discipline, the form as much as it is the connection.
I'm in a lot of these fitness challenges with, you know, friends in church groups and it's, you know, 5, 6, 7 people, and they'll put in $100 and you got to do X amount of workouts. And the community is definitely motivating and very engaging.
For sure. Semi-hard pivot, but let's go. How do I let go of regrets?
How do I let go of regrets? That's a tough question.
My reply is going to be a question. Do you actually let go of them?
I think that's the trick. I think regrets will always have a foothold on you, or a piece of you, or I think the trick is to try to balance that with the opposite of regret, which is gratitude. There's plenty to regret. But when you juxtapose it with what you're grateful for, it may not be anything at all. You hear people say, I've lived with no regrets. I don't know if that's fully possible. I don't know that someone who lives to be 100 years old can honestly say I've had no regrets, unless they're truly at peace.
Sure.
So I think that's the kicker too. And there's a very cornerstone spiritual aspect here, which is I personally believe that God is in control. And there's plenty of things that I do regret. But when I talk myself through the fact of what I believe, which is, God allowed everything to happen for a reason, and his plans are better and higher and unknown to me, then there might not be a reason to dwell on the idea of a regret, because it was supposed to happen anyway.
Sure.
One way or another. And for me, that's been a struggle and a journey.
Yeah.
Still getting there. kind of grew up with a faith background, but that gets tested.
Yes.
But I'm totally okay with leaving regret in the rear view. If I just kind of continue to tell myself what I truly believe, which is God is in control and everything that happened was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Do you think regret, I would probably say regret generally is like an unpleasant situation for most people.
Sure.
What else?
And there's different types of regret.
Sure.
You can regret someone's passing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it doesn't just have to be like, oh man, I wish I would have done this.
Right.
It could be something outside of you altogether.
I think what I'm curious about is like if it's generally unpleasant for most people, is there anything else that comes with regret that can be useful?
Yeah. Opportunity for the future.
Yeah.
I think most regret can be a learning opportunity, a teaching moment.
Because I don't know, can we say most of the time? I'm just going to use that phrase. Most of the time, regret shows you what you care about. Does that sound accurate or not?
I'm sure it could. Yeah. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have that feeling if you didn't care.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to like see it in multiple lenses. Like, yeah, it's unpleasant generally, but can it show us what we care about versus it just being a standalone, like, oh man, I regret doing that. Because if you just stay there, then it's like, it just keeps stabbing you.
Sure. And I suppose it can, I suppose what it can do is teach you a lot about what's important to you.
Yeah.
And maybe not directly, maybe not based on the specific situation.
Yep.
I got angry and I shouldn't have said that. I regret it. I think that shows that you care deeply about being perceived and how you're perceived.
How do I prepare for and adapt to unexpected challenges?
It's probably just a mic. Give me a chance to think.
Yeah.
Unexpected challenges, man.
How do I prepare for and adapt to unexpected challenges?
This is going to sound crazy.
Hit me.
I think much of my youth was trying to anticipate.
Because anxiety is your close friend.
Very close friend. Best friend. And once I got away from that, things normalized just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I get older, so I would say this to somebody who's in my current life station or somebody young watching or my younger self. Unexpected things can and will happen.
Yeah.
All the time. Respond to them by taking stock of the size of the situation. And it's a really, really funny thing. I heard it years ago, but we do it all the time with our kids. Some parents said it, when your kids throw a fit about this thing or that thing, has some big deal or a little deal. Depending on the kid, it'll always be a big deal.
Sure. Yeah.
But I say that I asked that question to myself. I'm like, this is a big deal or a little deal? And then the adult in me gets involved. I'm like, well, it's kind of a medium plus deal. It's like, but it's in kind of answering, I guess the question is actually simple. It's you can't predict the future. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. And you can try as hard as you can to mitigate every unforeseen challenge and unexpected event. But I think when it comes down to it, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself about the thing and what it actually means, what it says about you, what it doesn't say about you. And you go through that catastrophic what am I trying to say?
Catastrophic event.
No, you make up a catastrophic index.
Oh, okay.
Is this the most catastrophic or is it not really? And I find myself having those conversations quite often with myself, which is just like, what does this mean? What does it mean about me? Am I just completely worthless? No, I'm not. No, that's not what it means. Is this probably even, and so I think it's like, you just got to live your life and take these unexpected things as they come.
Yeah. The Stoics, they say, you can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond. It's very cliche, but there's something there, right?
That's the answer.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that question.
Yeah.
We can work a lot on formulating how we respond.
Right.
Because, an unexpected event could be something that makes you angry. That's an unexpected event.
Right.
How am I going to respond to that?
Yeah.
I don't want to respond to it the way I was responding 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I want to try to deconstruct it as much as possible.
Right.
I want to give it time to marinate. I want to come up with a list of non-negotiables about what that thing says about me or doesn't say about me, and what that thing will or will not impact me.
Right.
And then deal with it accordingly.
I think where my mind goes, and I don't know if this is wise or just anxiety management, but that quote of, you can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond. I kind of take the latter further and say, okay, what can I do to respond better? And I immediately go to like, okay, how does this human body, the physiological and biological body, handle stress and hard times better? And now, we've caught up, like a lot of these things we talk about, health and fitness, feed into that. So if you sleep better, you're more emotionally resilient.
Sure.
If you get to the gym, you're more emotionally resilient. And so I think that the conversation on health and fitness pivoted for me around 35, 38, of like, how aesthetic can I be, to how can all this stuff make me a better human in my response to the world?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the shift for me, going from like, I want to deadlift over 500 or win a physique show, to like, I think there's something here that is going to help me just respond wiser to life
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing with the unknown. Anything can happen at any time.
Yeah.
It's just, is this temple ready to respond to it?
Yep. Now that we've moved into the age of AI, how do I stay competitive and relevant in the marketplace at this age?
We've been getting a lot of questions about AI. AI is a massive hot topic. All of a sudden, everyone's an expert on AI. It's been like, 2-3 years. And people are making all sorts of predictions about the end of the world. And AI is a tool. Could it get out of hand? Sure. Do we need to live in that space right now? I don't know. Can it do a lot of things to help people, like any tool, like just computers, And so I think the easiest way to be relevant and stay competitive for everybody across the board is to recognize that artificial intelligence will always be artificial. It's not a person. It's not a human with a soul. It can't feel. I mean, people are making all sorts of crazy predictions. I don't know, but like for what it is right now, it's a computer. It's a supercomputer.
Yeah.
And it can do a lot of things, but there's a lot of things it can't do.
Yeah.
And we utilize AI multiple different ways for flow efficiency, just to make mundane tasks easier for people.
Sure.
It's a people assistant. And so I think rather than harp on all the stuff it's going to replace versus the stuff it's not going to replace, I think that question is great. And I think what differentiates and makes someone relevant is their passion towards something that they do. I don't know. I mean, call me crazy, man. I don't know. I don't know any of this stuff. There's people getting PhDs in AI right now. I don't think artificial intelligence or AI or any of these innovations, I don't think it'll ever possess the capability of being as passionate about something as a person.
Mm.
Like, think about it. What are you passionate about? AI, answering the question, making the model, writing the code. Can it develop passion and fulfillment from that? I don't know. I think the answer is no, but, and so.
Hold on, let me put a pin in that. I don't know enough of this topic to like say I'm an expert on it, but I do have questions.
I'm definitely not an expert.
One is the general aim of AI, do you think the purpose of it to replace a human being?
So these are the videos they're going to get. Just hashtag AI everything. I think for some people it is, but I don't think that's the case for everything. Like I said, the tasks that we have used it for here is flow efficiency. It just pushes things forward.
Yep.
It automates tasks. It checks boxes that we don't necessarily want people who are inundated and overwhelmed. We'd actually rather the people be on the phone with people and do the more people things that the AI can't do yet.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of conspiracy out there, and I don't know how smart AI can get. Yeah. But I hold to the belief that a soul is an inherently human thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that provable? Have we proven there's a soul? I don't. Consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So that's the argument, that it is already a consciousness of sorts, and it's becoming more conscious. I don't know. I'm going to piss some people off. A lot of people are going to call me dumb. Some people are going to, it's always funny, but I don't think the purpose should be to replace human anything. I think it should be to make people better. That's all. Just to give us more of our time back, to help us with tasks that are repetitive and in volume, so we can have better human connections.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sure someone has said it before. I'm not taking credit for this. But I think if that's the vision of people in AI, I would follow those people. I would subscribe to that notion that the artificial intelligence is going to give us time to connect better as people with each other for things that a machine still can't and might not ever be able to do. Robots have been doing surgery for decades.
Yeah.
Isn't that artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Hasn't that made humans better? Isn't it less margin for error? It's all good stuff. I don't know.
Two things come to mind for me. One is directly to the question. My second comment is probably off topic, but I think about like the art of communicating. I think if you can double down on that as a human, and that can take many forms, right? If you're a coder, you learn how to communicate there. If you're a salesperson, you learn how to communicate there. So I think to stay relevant or competitive with AI now, it's like, if you can learn how to communicate in your lane, I think that buffers against any kind of like replacement in this world. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I generally agree. And I think what still is like kind of nebulous and abstract is like, which a lot of people don't agree on. Like, there are people who think it will replace a human. And I'm like, how? And that's sad.
I think they're definitely, it's happening, right? There are a lot of elements and aspects that are replaceable. I think what you're pointing to is something that people are, understandably divided on in regards to the consciousness or the human soul, the emotional capacity, the connection. And that's a gray area, right? Like, how do you define the value of that versus like an actual human being writing copy versus AI writing copy? I don't know. It's so you have to kind of like understand.
It is very gray. But going back to the question, I think what always can and differentiate is that human capability for passion, to be the best, to be innovative, to be all the things that a machine may or may not be able to do, but is still very soulless. Yeah. It's missing that signature.
Last piece on this, I'm interested in what your take is, but I've seen some like AI relationships. You know what I'm talking about?
What?
And so my question is like, what
is he talking about?
So you can create an AI girlfriend. You can have your AI girl or boyfriend, like create them and have a relationship with them.
Weird.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. And so I'm like, okay.
You do? They're both laughing. Like they're like, yeah. You don't have one. Okay,
And
so then what?
So my question is,
To do what?
obviously,
To validate you, to connect with you, to
Yeah.
remind you of stuff?
it's obviously there's a human need there, right? Someone's trying to have a relationship with an artificial human to get some needs met. That's how I see it. But the form is a little bit interesting.
I'm gonna piss a lot of people off. That's weird, creepy. I mean, just
So here it is. I see it as it's a human thing happening. Like people want connection and relationship for years, like since
sure. The dawn of man.
right. But now the ability to do it in a way that's never been done before is available.
I actually think that's kind of a wonderful thing then. And hear me out on this. What it's doing is it's pointing back to this base human need.
Yeah.
And it's highlighting how much that's lacking.
Sure.
And there's many types of connections, of course, and many types of intimate connections.
Yeah.
So there's the physical, and there's the I think generally the two go hand in hand, right? Like we're just talking about as old as time.
Yeah.
And so how will AI ever be able to provide? Part of it is a physical, and like it's actually very real. You know, the touch and the skin and all this, deeply. What's the word? Not sexual, not sensual. Maybe both. I don't know. It's kind of all interconnected.
Yeah.
You know, you see someone that's attractive in your eyes, wide up, and the hormones flutter, and that's just by looking.
Yeah.
Like nothing has even happened yet.
Right.
The hormones are raging and everything's going nuts, and all you've done is laid eyes on the most beautiful person in the world, right?
Sure.
There's been no connection other than, and what do you call that? Telepathic?
Yeah.
Right? We've all been there, right? You see someone, you're like, oh my God. Nothing's even been exchanged yet.
Yeah.
So like, how do you get that? Like I think it's, like I said, it's highlighting a deep, deep human need.
Right.
And I think at the same time, the fact that nothing but another human can provide it.
Sure.
Ultimately.
I think it's also directly, I don't know if attacking is the right word, but making a straight line for the reward system of the brain. Because what's happening, right? Just like you said, I can literally create the woman of my dreams. I want her to have brown curly hair, green eyes, small waist.
And where does she live? On a screen?
Yeah, it's an AI. Like, and they can communicate. You know, you can have like foreplay, or you can say, hey, I'm feeling down today. They'll talk to you. Or I want you to do this. Talk to me about how you do this to me. Or whatever.
You know, who comes up with this
So
stuff?
what I'm saying is, like, you can create the woman of your dreams. You can have her do whatever she wants.
Did you come up with it? He's laughing a lot.
But so now it's like you can get all of this without having to do the work of like getting a person.
I think it's worth asking the guys who are losing their minds chuckling, like, because this is like, I mean, it's their generation. We're the old guys in the room.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? And so it's like, I guess the question is like, why would you want to do, like, just for fun? Like, because
a lot of guys are just like lonely. They're attached to their phones.
Well,
they're almost
but did you hear what he just said?
Yeah. Like, can I add something?
Did you? Because I said it earlier in this episode.
Yeah.
He said a lot of guys are lonely, and I said a lot of the world is lonely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loneliness, but these are deeply human connections.
Right. So I think what the AI relationship or girlfriend or boyfriend does is, like, with porn, you get the reward of the sexuality, but with this, you get that and the connection.
And there's many studies. We've talked about this before. Porn is one of the most psychologically and mentally destructive things. And you've shared like research before, and would love to actually come ready next time just to be able to prove it. But a lot of the research and the evidence behind it is that it feeds into this thing and it doesn't exist and it leaves you wanting for more and more and more. And the dopamine desensitization, which actually makes real relationships
Less exciting.
less appealing. Yeah. And so it has ruined a generation of men, dare I say, our age. And I think based on what you're telling me, the experiment will end the same way. They will be unable to relate to a human being, because if the AI boyfriend, girlfriend, I'm assuming if you're programming this thing, it's going to be perfect.
Right. Why wouldn't it be perfect if you have everything?
She's not giving you heat, flash, she's not asking you what to like, it's just perfect. It's perfection. Yeah. What is that? That doesn't exist. That is not real. And so now you're stuck in a
fantasy.
It's not real. Right. It's literally like, that's not what a real relationship is like. There's always going to be friction, challenges, different ideas.
Yeah.
It's going to make another generation of emotionally devoid individuals.
It's even more sketchy when they start coming out with like humanoid robots.
Like I get it, because like, look, it's not, it's everything you want. So why wouldn't you want it? Right. So I'm not justifying it. No. But I do understand the pull, because you get the sexuality, but you also get the connection, because you're essentially creating this thing to feed into your needs in the exact perfect way that you want.
It's
as
actually,
human,
it's scary.
That's an understandable human need. It's just the form in which it's taking is very like, damn. It's the closest thing to the real thing as you can get. That's how I see it.
But, well, to somebody who's engaging it.
Yeah.
But again, as we just discussed with the porn experiment, if that's as destructive as that is, I would imagine something that goes to the core of emotional connection and intimacy is probably going to be more destructive. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, because when you interface, like if you're engaging that, right? I'm just assuming if you're engaging with a perfect fantasy relationship and then you interface with a real one, anything else is going to be either like completely disinteresting or very, very difficult, to the point where it's like, it's not worth it, because why?
I mean, there's a social media clips and then there's the long form. So this won't be on social media, but you're literally breeding a new generation of serial killers and psychos. I mean, it's sad and scary at the same time, but more importantly, it's highlighting a big void that a lot of people are missing a ton of human connection. I love that. I love everything about that.
I thought this was cool. Let's chop this up. The Mood Shift Trilogy. So there are 3 things that you can do like practically, but point towards like the neurochemistry of why it works. Music that uplifts you. Movement that energizes you. And then connection with something or someone meaningful. So there's dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, endorphin, kind of like cocktail. And this was like kind of like surgically removed from psychologist's frame, but I thought it was cool to like have in your back pocket of like taking a bad moment or a bad day and like making it a little bit better.
Sure.
With something super practical. I mean, we all have songs or playlists that we love.
Those are all super practical.
Right? So put your headphones in, listen, movement, simple as a walk, a workout.
Just get the lungs breathing.
And then the connection piece, I think we can spend some time there. First 2 are pretty straightforward, but how do you do this practically? The connection with someone or something meaningful to kind of like shift your state.
I think the 2 most practical things are date night with my wife and just alone time with the kids, individually, one-on-one time. Literally just playing for 20 minutes, recognizing a drawing. That connection is really meaningful. You feel that almost right away.
So you do it like not isolate taking one out for ice cream. You do it like inside the
I mean, it's hard. Yeah. It's hard. But like whenever I get the chance, the one-on-one time removed from home base is really powerful.
Yeah. Is it hard for you to get out of bad moods?
Yes.
So you know that.
It's something that I've been working on for a very long time.
What worked and what hasn't worked?
I mean, you're getting into my soul right now. I don't know how much time we have, but it's easy for me to get in bad moods and it's hard to get out. And I'm learning to love myself for it. And it's really hard. It's not a lovable thing, but I have to tell myself I am this way for whatever reason. I can change it. It's not okay, but it's okay. If that makes sense. And the quote that really gets me is if you can be in a good mood for any reason, cut. If you can be in a bad mood for any reason, you can be in a good mood for any reason. That's something I'm trying to be more intentional about when there's not anything particularly great going on, to just be upbeat, to try to combat a lot of those bad mood moments so that maybe just the volume of the good moods can hopefully overwhelm the bad moods. But I really love that quote. And it's true.
Have you found things that are pretty reliable to nudge you towards a good mood?
No, just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like that quote, I don't know who said it. It's really powerful. You can be in a bad mood for any reason, which a lot of us can.
Yeah.
You can be in a good mood for any reason.
Sure.
Imagine the whole world in good moods for no reason more frequently.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things would be different. My day, my world would be different if I was in a good mood more often for no reason. So I really love that. I think just at least the awareness of knowing that I can get into bad moods pretty quickly and it's hard to get out. But at least I, didn't have that realization 15, 20 years ago.
Sure.
I just thought it was kind of, I'm in a bad mood. So what?
What it is.
Yeah. But it's not what it is. So that's kind of a learning opportunity.
This is a correspondence from a therapist to a therapist. So one therapist, ironically, is like a helper, right? Her profession is helping people through pain, whatever. But she herself, I think the list was like going through divorce, bankruptcy, and a strange kid, like pretty much at the same time. This correspondence is from one of her friends in reply to her situation. Going through this is one requirement of an election in which suffering is the price of the ticket to rebirth. The collapse of the false self is painful indeed, but it is also how the self begins to emerge from underneath all of the attitudes and adaptations required in the past. This death, rebirth, and this difficult in-between stage is how you get yourself back again, how you begin to bring who you really are, into this world. The former is in service to anxiety management, and the latter is in service to divinity.
Mm.
So take a minute, go where you want to go with that.
All I got out of that, do you know where I'm going or no? The antidote to anxiety is God. That's all I got out of that. I'm curious if whoever wrote that was secular or not.
Yeah, in service to divinity. I mean, what else is there though?
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah, I mean, you boil it down, and that's what else can it be in service to?
Yeah. But again, what I get what I got from that is the two opposing. On one end you have anxiety, and the other end you have God.
Yeah.
Who says, "Be still, and know that I am God."
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Love you.
Appreciate you. Love you.